Welcome to the Church Safety Guys broadcast with hosts James McGarvey, Paul Buckner, and Mike Scully. Together, they make up the Church Safety Guys. Their mission? To equip, train, and disciple church safety teams. Join us for the next hour as we talk about all things church safety and security. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, join one of our church safety and security communities online, and share this broadcast with your church.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Sunday night evening broadcast of the Church Safety Guys. I am James and I am joined by Mike and Paul tonight. We're all back.
Yes.
We're all here.
All
It's
together
a Christmas
again.
miracle.
And is back in town.
So if you just joined us, thanks for hanging out and watching or listening at a later time. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to click the like and subscribe button down on the lower right-hand corner. And then if you're listening on multiple platforms, Spotify or Apple or Amazon, feel free to like and subscribe, and that way you'll get updates when we roll out new shows, etc. And if you have the opportunity, for sure, go to Church Safety Guys on Facebook, like our page. That always helps us out, and share the broadcast. Definitely take the opportunity to pass it along where you feel that other individuals can benefit. So for tonight, if you would, if you're joining us, go ahead and list what church you're from down below, and what state it's in, because that kind of helps us too. So all three of us are back, and looking forward to it. It's fun. I miss it when all three, stuff comes up and we have to adjust accordingly. I don't want to start crying here, because then you guys will think that I'm just kind of being weird, but
it's so beautiful.
It's kind of, it's something that I've, believe it or not, come to look forward to every week. And, I get an hour to hang with you guys and make fun of Paul. Mostly hang with Mike and then make fun of Paul. I'm okay with that.
We all have our hobbies.
So we hope that you guys listening, you had a blessed and great Thanksgiving. I know this year is quite a bit different than past years, and it looks like Christmas is going to be a tad bit different this year than last year, but we're looking forward to finishing up the year. We got some exciting stuff. Next week, we're actually going to be talking to a company about radios, and a company we partnered with to get you guys a discount on church communications. So we're going to bring them in, and Lord willing, we'll talk to them. And then the Sunday after that, we're actually celebrating our 50th broadcast, believe it or not. So, it's I was gonna do the whole Steve Jobs thing where we say, like, it started in our basement, but we're still, or garage, but we're still in the basement garage. So I don't know, but you definitely want to hang out with us on that one, because we've got some real fun things planned. We've got some great giveaways we're going to be doing. We're going to be giving away. We've got books, resources, devotionals, Bibles, the whole nine yards. So definitely, and that's actually December 20th. So definitely join us for that. And then we are going to take, I believe it's 2 weeks off, and then we're working on the lineup. Yeah, we're working on the lineup for next year, which will be our 4th season.
Wow.
And I honestly am more pumped about that than anything we've ever done, because, and I'm not going to give it away. So you guys, you have to come and hang out with us and see who our guests are. But our guest list for, the next season is really fantastic. And we've got some great folks that have reached out to us and have been willing to come on and talk to us. So fun times. So
stuff.
For sure. So as we go through tonight, we're going to be talking about insurance. We have a special guest with us and one of our show partners and sponsors. If you have questions, just like any other Sunday night, if you want to post them in the comments, we'll do our best on the second half to try and get to those. And I did already say that if it was a crazy topic or crazy question, that we may come back to it and put it in the parking lot. But I'm going to go ahead and bring Dhea Simpkins in, and Dhea is actually with Thomas Alexander Insurance. And again, they're one of our great sponsors and partners for the broadcast. So thank you for joining us tonight, Dhea, and putting up with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Welcome.
I don't know. I don't know about the honor, but we're definitely grateful that you're hanging with us. So, what we actually play the broadcast, and your agency is not a mystery to the folks that watch by any means, but if you would just go ahead and start off and just kind of explain what you guys do and what you're about, and how long you've been helping churches out in the area of insurance.
Sure. Our agency started about 50 years ago. It's been a little longer than that. My dad started the agency, actually. That's where the Thomas Alexander comes from, of course. And he was on a missions trip. Somebody had become terribly ill on the missions trip and had to be life flighted out. 50 years ago, that was a big thing, being life flighted out. So when all said and done, they got back. The person recovered quite well, but the medical bills were extraordinary. Come to find out, the church couldn't help them at all because the insurance wasn't written properly.
Oh, wow.
Because it wasn't a church package policy. So my dad had then sought out and said, look, this isn't right. We've got to do something for our ministries to help our churches out. He came across Brotherhood Mutual Insurance Company, and that is the major market that we do put our churches and all of our nonprofits. So actually what I do, it's a mouthful, it's a nonprofit 501c religious entity. So you don't put that on a business card because nobody would read it all. So as long as it's Christ-centered, I can insure it. And in Ohio, that's very big because the laws are always changing in Ohio, and we're a weird state.
We are.
But that's how the agency all got started. We decided that we need to do more for our ministries. Now, my dad did retire a few years back, and I took it over, and it's been an interesting bumpy road, but it's been wonderful. We do anything nonprofit, and I love what I do. Working with Christians all day is amazing, and it's a God's gift. They have to have insurance, so that's what we're here for. And we do a lot more than just insurance. So we are a plethora of information. So a lot of times churches might call us and say, hey, look, our roof is leaking. What do we do? Well, let us help you. Let's find somebody in the area for you. We have free webinars. We have everything from church safety to roofs to youth ministries, and we work with other people. So we have a great network that we can always rely on and go get help from people. And we go anywhere in Ohio. We like to eat, so we'll go anywhere in Ohio that somebody needs us.
It's funny, you mentioned a couple of things, but you guys do a fantastic job. And I know that just from personal experience, our church, or the church that I go to, has used their services for years. And it's always interesting to me because we've had things happen in the past, like we were talking before the show, like catalytic converters ripped off vehicles, or, thankfully we've never had copper taken out of any AC units yet. I say yet, hopefully it doesn't happen. But different things, crazy things like that. And, when we've ever had a question, even when I've had a question about the safety team and what's the coverage? How do we train? How can I make sure that we're secure and covered liability wise? I'll give you guys a call, and you're like, here's my cell phone, call me anytime. And then you guys do a great job at trying to help and trying to answer that stuff. So It's always it's always a very interesting and unique situation because there's a lot. From my experience anyway, and I'm sure you can talk to this. It's always it seems like there's always a lot of myths about insurance and what they'll cover and what they won't cover and that sort of thing. So we often, I mean, we'll have churches ask us, and a lot of times we just kind of default to saying, here's a great person because we don't have that wheelhouse, but this person does. So
right. And it goes a lot further than just insuring a church. So you have a lot of you have a lot of insurance companies out there that will sell a church package policy. There are only 2 major companies in Ohio that will sell a church package policy designed just for a church. Brotherhood Mutual Insurance Company is one of those 2. The biggest difference in having a company that provides a church package policy or just a company that has a package policy that you can put a church on is the liability side. Anybody can insure a building. You can go to State Farm or Nationwide and get your building insured for the most part. It's the liability side that is tricky because safety and security, not every insurance company is going to cover it the same. It goes a lot further. You go to sexual misconduct or even, anything that's church related. A lot of companies can't insure it the right way. You've got to make sure you have a church company do that.
So jumping in, I wanted to say thanks for coming on the show. And
Thank you.
A question along those lines is related to that liability. Are you looking at this as a umbrella type coverage? And I'm by no means versed in the world of insurance, but I look at it, is it some sort of umbrella policy for that church that's covering multiple things under that? Or you're talking about much more specific, in other words, having the right weapon for the fight. You're talking about having something specific for covering security teams, correct?
Right. So when I first meet a ministry, and it can be anything from a church to a Christian school, a college, food pantry, again, as long as it's Christ-centered. So take all those components into consideration, or even 2 Fellowship Baptist churches. Let's say you have 2 Fellowship Baptist churches and they're side by side. They are completely different. Their buildings might look the same and the name might be the same, but they are completely different. So you're going to go in and meet that person and find out what their ministry is about. You want to design that package policy to fit their ministry. You're not a cookie cutter. We're not going to cut you out and ice you and hope for the best. We need to make sure that your policy is designed just for your ministry. You talk about an umbrella. No, that's what makes us so special. We know what our ministries need. We are trained for it. We have to go to school for it. We have to continue our education for it. We have to be part of the ministry. So I am required by Brotherhood to be in some type of outreach ministry. I am required to tithe. I am required to act a certain way in public. So it's a whole different world. We're not in it for the money. If I would not be insuring nonprofits. We're in it for a big different reason. I think it's my calling. Just like you guys do this and you think it's your calling. A pastor is called from the heart. Most pastors don't get paid enough to survive, more or less, drive Cadillacs or whatever. So everything needs to come together as one component. We need to sit down, understand you, know you, and write a big package policy. It's already all in there. Yes, we do offer an umbrella, but it's not the way that you think. Your coverages are already going to be enrolled in there. Does that help, or did I go overboard?
No, that's great. And I think that's the point in the differentiator here is so many look at this. I mean, I speak for myself, and from a standpoint of being part of a church safety team, I don't know that necessarily our church safety team is thinking about, all right, is the church insured? What happens when something happens, not if, because again, we're there because it's when it does happen, not the if. And it's more that standpoint of, are they prepared? But I think it's important for those of us that kind of wear that hat, if you will,
Right.
pun intended, that are actually in this ministry to we should be thinking about this. We should
Right.
be going back to our pastors and saying, just like we would any other topic related to our area of service, and saying, look, yes, we are called. We enjoy doing this. This is something that we're contributing back to this church, but we'd like to understand, how is this church insured? What happened when this, have you looked at your policy? When was the last time you looked at your policy?
Right.
Covered in these scenarios. And I think it's important for us as security leaders and security team members to have those conversations.
That's correct. We try to meet with our ministries one-on-one at least once every 3 years because they change. A ministry can change from day to day, night to night. A lot of things can happen, especially with COVID and our ministries they have to think outside the box, which is not a bad thing. I kind of think it's a great thing that we have to relearn and reteach ourselves because it makes us stronger. And we realize of all the possibilities of things we can do. If you have an insurance agent that is listening to you and what you're trying to tell them, you don't have to worry about what you're doing. That's your insurance agent's job. Your job is to go out and do your ministry. Our job is to make sure you can do your ministry without any problems or any issues. So what we like to tell people is, you've worked very hard for your ministry, right? So why not let us do the worrying and you do what you're called to do? And then we'll tell you, hey, look, you can't do that anymore. Or, hey, that's fantastic. Go outside the box. We encourage you to go outside the box. We want you to. The only way you can reach somebody is to go out of your comfort zone. If you've got somebody just jumping church from church to church to church, you're not reaching anybody. It's the same group of people. They're just jumping pews. We call those pew dusters. I'm Methodist. I can say that as much as I want. So if you're just bringing pew dusters into your congregation, you're not growing at all. You need to have the ability to go out and reach the non-Christian. That's where the real challenge is, not just grabbing someone from another congregation.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
For sure. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was sitting here thinking about this. I know as a civilian chaplain for law enforcement, I deal with a lot of municipalities, and I end up in conversations with a mayor or a chief of police. And I've had these conversations where they have found out that their old insurance company, instead of having like, okay, you have this many trailers and this is the amount of coverage for these things, they were going through and charging them like individual line, and all kinds of things just to milk that city, that municipality as much as they could. Right. Is that something you find when you guys are assessing people to bring them in, that oftentimes they're overpaying on the church side?
Yes and no. Again, that comes down to the main thing. Do you have a church package policy? If you have a church package policy, then that should never occur, period. If you have someone that just sells a church policy, then they don't understand the ministry. They don't know that a pastor is a pastor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and needs to be covered for that. They don't know when you guys say volunteers, you are not kidding that they are volunteers. Like they have absolutely no experience with a hammer. That's what a volunteer is. They're doing it because they love you, not because they know how. So you need to make sure that, let's do safety. I like to say safety, not security, because a lot of churches or ministries just don't like that word. But you have a safety team. So on your safety team, can you conceal and carry? If you ask your insurance agent, hey, we have a safety team, we have volunteers, can they conceal and carry? And they say yes right away, then you're going to say, define volunteer for me, because I want to know exactly what you mean and I mean by volunteer. Is it the same thing? So I know on your brotherhood policy, when we say volunteers, that's exactly what we mean. We don't mean someone that carries a weapon for their job. What we mean is somebody that has their conceal and carry license, stays up on their training, cleans their gun, and realize that if they fire that gun, then they better be ready to accept the consequences that come after it from the damage they've done. So you need to ask questions, and you need to be very direct with your questions. I'm always here. I don't understand a lot of other insurance companies because it's so much just to understand the one I've got and all the different things it has to offer. But if you call me, I can always assist you and say, okay, these are the questions you need to ask your agent. And if your agent answers you in this way, you need to ask again and this way.
Nice.
And you want to make sure. So the other thing about insurance to remember is it's not any good if you can't afford it. The biggest expense on an insurance policy is your building. Okay, it's just a building. I know your great grandfather built it and you love it and it's wonderful, but it is just a building. Ask yourself how many times in the Bible that Jesus was actually in a building. It's 3. So it's just a building. You can hold your ministry anywhere in the world that you want. You can go in your barn. You can go outside. With COVID, we've learned we can hold our ministry in a lot of different ways. But It's just a building. But it's the biggest expense on the policy, not the liability where it should be. And again, this is the important part, because when you get your insurance policy and you see this big number, your building's worth $3.4 million, okay? If it burnt down to the ground today, I don't care that it's worth $3.4 million because I'm never going to get that money back anyway. You need to ask yourselves, do I have enough money to rebuild the building I want? So that's what you need to keep in mind. Do I have enough money to build the building I want? Not what this $3 million is, because you're not going to see it anyways. If it burns to the ground and it only takes $2 million to build it, well, that 1.3, you just paid for it for nothing. So that's it. But the liability side, that's where we come in. That's the important side to me. That's, besides roofs and catalytic converters, those are our 2 biggest claims. The liability side. And if they're going to ask you next about COVID, are we liable with COVID? When people come to our churches, are we responsible? Right now in the courts in Ohio, you cannot prove that COVID happened at a church. You can't. There are too many other places that people go, say, and do. And you're hearing about COVID being transferred from one person to another person in the most bizarre ways. I mean, there is just no way to track this. We don't know enough. Even with the virus coming out, you hear the extreme right saying one thing, the extreme left saying something else. And then, people like me who are in the middle going, I don't know. The best thing to tell our ministry is to listen to our governor. We have a great governor. I didn't vote for him. I wish I would have. But he's, his hair is completely gray and almost gone, but he's doing a really good job. I mean, listen to the guidelines, have masks ready, have hand sanitizer ready, make sure you block off every other pew, follow the guidelines. It's important. And then you'll be fine. We'll protect you regardless on our end. If you have brotherhood. And me. I don't know about other people.
Well, I will just say real quick, and then I'll toss it over to Mike because he had something. Brotherhood is a fantastic company.
I agree.
So, I mean, they have resources online. I'll actually pull up the link here and see, but they've got policies already written, guidelines, things to follow. And here's the thing that I've found over the years, and I know Paul has been in a similar situation because we kind of did church safety and security before it was cool and before before there was a lot out there.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we actually at Fellowship, we took our policy once it was designed and written and sent it to our attorney and said, look through this, please, and tell us, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But now we have brotherhood insurance, and I can say that, if I ever have a question on our policy, I reference that because I know that's our insuring company. And so for us, it's like, it's 10 times easier now because we're not recreating the wheel. It's
right.
Hey, here's the guidelines. We've already taken these policies and, matched them up with industry standard.
James, if you do have something like that legally, Brotherhood will look at it for free with their legal team. If you send it to me, we will send it on to her. And they're actually Christian lawyers. I know that's bizarre, but they really are. And they're really good. It takes them a day or two to get back to you, but they they are very good about saying, hey, no, no, yes, yes, and then send it back to your lawyer for finalization if that's what you want. But yeah, that's free with Brotherhood.
Good to know. For sure. Mike, you had something you wanted to throw in?
Yeah, so a lot of this, I think we mentioned COVID, we mentioned some of the other areas of the church safety team. A lot of that comes down to reasonableness, correct? I think in the sense is, did the party act reasonable in the situation? In other words, if somebody was in the exact same situation, whether they were on the team or not, would they have likely acted in the same way, i.e. reasonable? And I think many states have that. I don't know if it's spelled out necessarily in an insurance clause. My guess is it's probably there, but it's definitely in the law in many states. Now, in the state of Texas, beg to differ. I won't go into governor's orders here and there between Ohio and Texas, but I think when you look at that and you say, okay, did the church take reasonable efforts based on what we knew to try to protect the church, whether that's COVID with spacing, whether that's temperature checks and other sorts of things? Again, argue the effectiveness of that all you want, but at the same point, did they make an effort? And I think that's the reasonableness. Now, if we take that to the safety team side and some of the other stuff of what we're doing, well, was there some sort of reasonableness in how the team was selected? Did you have some sort of criteria by which you brought somebody onto the team?
Exactly.
Do you qualify? Do you not qualify? Do you re-qualify on an annual basis? Do you do some sort of assessment? So I think there's, again, that reasonableness, and we as security leaders need to be looking at it. Do we, in our church that we serve, have reasonable coverage?
Right. So the one thing like you said, I want to a little bit go back to is we don't know your ministry the way you do. You know your congregation a lot better than we do. So we're not going to say to you, no, you can't have this person. Yes, you can have this person. Like you said, it's within reason. So you know who is going to be a fit for your safety or security team a lot better than we are. Matter of fact, we don't even want to know who's on your safety and security team. And don't freak out. The reason why we don't want to know is because it's going to change. And you're going to forget to call us because we're not on your mind. You're on ours, but we're not on yours. So you're going to forget to call us and it's going to change. And then you're going to have an incident. And we're going to come back to you and say, oh, yeah, but we have this list. And you're going to say, oh, darn it, I forgot to call and tell you 6 months ago this list changed. I can't tell you driving around Ohio how many times I drive by a church I have insured, stop, back up, stand there and look at it, take the picture, shoot it to my office and say, hey, anybody know this whole church built on a whole new side? Nope. No,
oh my goodness.
It happens all the time. We're just not on your mind. Your mind is on your ministry where it should be. And that's the promise we make to you. Do your ministry. I'll figure it out. I will find you. Don't worry. I'll find you. In the meantime, concentrate on what you know and reasonableness.
For sure. And I think when we're responding, and we talk about it all the time, we're responding in an action. Okay, we need to make sure we're responding with the correct tools. That tool that we're not thinking about in our teams is having that coverage to protect us behind the scenes. Now, it may not immediately help with the immediate occurrence, but it will help with the aftermath.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And as a board member or a leader of your church, I always suggest keeping a notebook. You're going to leave your position in 2, 3 years, 4 years, whatever the turnover is when new people come on. Every ministry is different. But I even tell it to our food pantries and all of our ministries, keep a notebook because eventually you are going to move on. And instead of somebody else coming into your spot trying to figure out what the heck to do, you've done all the hard work. Why not make it easier? That way they can even take the ministry and take it a step further because they don't have to go a step backwards to figure out what you did. So keep a notebook of everything you've done just to help the next person.
For sure. Well, we're going to go ahead. We'll take a quick sponsor break. And then when we come back, we'll certainly Paul has some stuff that he wants to throw in there, and we'll definitely open it up. If anyone has any questions, now's the time. Actually, you can go ahead and post them in the comment section, and we'll do our best to get to them this night. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
The worst has happened. Evil has invaded the sanctuary. Lives were ended, and the life of every surviving member of your church has changed forever. There will be funerals to attend. The grieving and the counseling will go on for years to come. You may even lose church members, especially if your pastor was killed during the attack. But what if I told you that all of this could have been prevented with the proper training? That your church could learn how to secure its campus and how to see the signs of an attack before it happens. At Shield Force International, we will teach you the skills you need to protect your church, to protect your children, to mitigate and even eliminate would-be threats to your church body, all before it happens. We can no longer pretend that evil doesn't exist, or that churches aren't targets. Attacks against churches and pastors are on the rise. Call or visit us online for a free consultation.
With over 50 years of experience with religious and nonprofit organizations, Thomas Alexander Insurance and Associates understands that your congregation is different from a traditional business. We're here to fulfill your needs, coming to you while creating a personal plan for your budget and size. From your local community to around the globe, we are advocates for you. Thomas Alexander Insurance and Associates, your partner in service.
The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping equip, train, and disciple church safety and security teams. We are about all things church safety and security, which starts with a ministry mindset and a servant's heart. We are protectors, guardians, ambassadors, and shepherds. We help church and place of worship safety and security teams all over the United States through our broadcasts, online communities, conferences, trainings, resources, and products. Help us reach more churches in impactful ways by considering becoming a monthly ministry partner. $2, $5, $20 a month will help us continue to provide these resources.
All right, so we're back. So thanks for joining us tonight. This is the Sunday night broadcast of the Church Safety Guys. And we have with us tonight Dhea Simpkins with Thomas Alexander Insurance. And again, thank you for joining us and hanging out with us. Sometimes we're pretty crazy, but people keep coming back to listen to us. I say sometimes because, I don't know. I have to leave room for some error, especially with Paul. But we're talking about insurance and insuring your church and the correct questions to ask. And I know a lot of times it can be really challenging, and a lot of times people don't know. And I'm going to coin Paul's phrase here. They don't know what they don't know to ask. So, and with insurance, a lot of times, we can't compete with someone that's been in it for years and knows all the little details, but it's a pretty important thing. And I know a lot of times it gets overlooked. So I'll say that, and I'll toss it over to Paul, because you wanted to jump in
Yeah,
there.
I wanted to follow that because we have been blessed to bring on people who have been fire marshals and worked with Homeland Security, people with medical backgrounds and talking tourniquets and chest seals and things like that. And a lot of times we focus on the tactical stuff. That's just human nature, the things that everybody runs to. But there's, if you're paying for the right amount of insurance and you're not underpaying, and like where I went to church for 25 years, they found out when they switched insurance companies, they were changing some things up and realized their policy, they were paying for this much building and had this much building. And they were like, holy cow, we've been overpaying by thousands of dollars. And I got the impression that was annually, and it kind of freaked them out. And all of a sudden we had more money in the budget to take care of God's people.
Amen.
And so that's where I was going to say, that's where I love that, where you guys were talking about that, because getting a quote, getting an estimate, talking to Brotherhood, if you're not using Brotherhood, or going back and looking at things and going, one of our elders, one of our board members guesstimated the size of the church and didn't actually measure it. And that's what happened to us. Guesstimated the physical dimensions of the church and they overpaid. And the insurance company's like, okay. And they wrote the policy based on the guesstimation. And so we paid way too much. And then to follow that, and I think this is something that a lot of churches, if they haven't thought of it, they will. We're big on cross training as the church guys. And so, i.e., my church and James's church, let's say instead of being 10 hours apart, we were 10 minutes apart, and his church and my church wanted to cross train. We can bring in bigger groups and we can do all this stuff. It's from a dollars and cents standpoint, it makes sense.
Right.
But I've actually had some instructors raise a very good question, which is, depending on the insurance company you're with, if something goes sideways and Paul Buckner's not a member of Fellowship Baptist, but he's there and he has to take a shot, is he covered?
So that's a key. So a lot of people will participate within your ministry, and we consider them part of your ministry. Let's do a different example, something a little easier. Let's say a bunch of kids decide to go to Kings Island and it's summertime and they're going to play. And of course, they're going to invite their boyfriend or their girlfriend or the little girl down the street to play with them. Okay. Even though they've never attended your church before, they now are technically a part of your ministry because they are getting on a bus with your ministry name on it. They are going to the gates with your ministry leaders. So they are a part of your ministry. So even though they aren't technically in the Sunday school class or tithing, they are still a part of your ministry. So we're still going to cover them. So let's go back to safety teams. We encourage our churches to, if they have a safety team, to train them. We want you to train them. So we're going to let you open up your building for training. So you can have in the local sheriff's department or police department or somebody like that come in and do the training. We would prefer you did that instead of Jim Bob down the road coming in teaching you how to train. So we want you to do that. And we want you to pair with the church down the street. So let's say you're pairing with let's do Catholics. Catholic is different. So we're going to take your Catholic church and we're going to take your Baptist church, and you guys are going to pair together, but you're going to meet at the Baptist church, right? And I have the Baptist church insured. So now all these people from the Catholic church are actually part of your church because they've come into your door and they're part of your ministry. So we're going to treat them as part of your unit because they're now part of you and working with you. Now, if you met down at the Catholic Church, good luck with the Pope, but their policy will kick in first unless there's an issue, and then we're always going to be here for you.
Cool. So
your ministry is most important to us.
That is so valuable because there's people sitting at home listening to this going, okay, we've deliberately not scheduled training because, and what I love is if you have a multi-campus church, like we have one in Springfield, Missouri, about an hour and a half from me, that's 14,000 members across 3 or 4 campuses. It's a mid-sized church. And And they have different security concerns, of course, but they train across multiple campuses. And let's say they did a vacation Bible school, they could stagger their vacation Bible school and pull people from other campuses to come in to not tax that campus's security element.
Well, that's actually even a different scenario because you guys should all be under one anyways.
Right.
If you're under a head ministry,
yeah,
all those ministries should fall over that. There should be a mother policy.
Yeah.
And either they're all how I do it. And remember, if you're not with Brotherhood, don't listen to this part. But how I do it, and a lot of us do it, is we'll take the mother church and we'll put all these other outreach ministries that they have. It could be anything from a food pantry to a startup to whatever under the one, like Mike said, under the one umbrella because it saves on premium. Yeah. Remember, once the policy is in place, that's your big box of premium. You're already checking off your boxes, right? So now when you're adding all kinds of new stuff, you simply just throw over a new liability clause. Let's say you want to do something with teen pregnancy. So you now have a pregnancy outreach center in the Missouri City down the road. I don't know. And so you want to pull it up under your umbrella because you already have the big 1 million, 3 million liability. Now you just need to slide the liability clause on under pregnancy. Does that make sense? So if you have your big one, that's where all your money is going to be. Take all your little ones and put them back under. The only time you would break that off is if your break off or your startup now has their own 501c3 number, or they use a separate bank account, or they have separate board members. If any one of those three scenarios come into play, you need to ask yourself, are they still under us? Are they still part of us?
Nice. That makes sense.
And Brotherhood, you can go anywhere in the world. So let's say you have a ministry. Matter of fact, I'm doing it right now. I have something called, and I don't know if I'm allowed to put their name in, an organization. And it was started up by an OSU football player, but it's big, it's huge. They're all over Ohio, and now they're stepping into Kentucky, West Virginia, but they're still under that mother umbrella. So even though I'm not licensed in those states, I can still hold it under that major umbrella.
Cool. The thing that when I was drawing that analogy, and that opened a whole other window I wouldn't even have thought to ask you. So that was
sorry.
No, that was great. I was sitting here going, I opened a door and there was a whole nother room in there. That was awesome.
Sorry.
No, that's great stuff.
I get so excited.
Well, there's people at home that were going, ooh, that just answered my question. And because like my church was started by another church and they spun them off. And now my church is getting ready to spin off another church.
Right.
But to follow that, one of the things that a lot of churches have wondered about for a long time is if James's church cross trains with my church, and let's say they're actually about the same size, but let's say they weren't. I used to be at a 200 member church. And we, he brings our church in. Could they borrow people for their vacation Bible school or their Halloween alternative deal? And that's what I'm so excited about, because that's a really good question. And if you're with Brotherhood, which is obviously that's important, and then you are covered, because I've straight up had people say, oh no, there's no way an insurance company is not going to do that. And I'm like, well, the way I read it.
Well, and again, most insurance companies won't. They are very, very correct. So I own the agency, and I have quite a few other agents under me. And they sell for a multitude of companies, and they sell a lot of different products. My brain can't do that. I have to concentrate on ministries, again, because it's so complex, and each ministry's component is so different than the next. I have to be very careful. So I stick to what I know and what I love. So they do everything else, but it brings me to what you got to make sure your policy is designed for your ministry. So even though you have multiple things you're doing, just call your insurance agent and ask them. If they can't answer your questions, call me. I'll give you the questions to ask them, and make sure you're covered for what you need to. Brotherhood is an amazing company for ministries. I would never put one of my ministries with any other company. They're not the cheapest. They're not the most expensive. But Mike, I think you said, you basically get what you pay for. I mean, if you want the customer service and the ability to increase your ministry, then.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's we were talking a couple of days ago about kind of the basis for that. There's so many misconceptions of what insurance covers, what they don't cover, what they cover for safety teams, how is it different for other ministries, that, I mentioned to you, I had a church in New England reach out to me, and they said, well, and it was a campus thing, and the campus church somehow felt like, well, that church will be covered under this part of our policy, but not another policy. And so they had asked me, well, like with concealed carry stuff, how does that, will that church's policy cover me, or will the state's liability, state's guidance cover me, that sort of thing.
Right.
And the first thing I said to them was, you need to call your insurance company, like pick up the phone, make that call, because there's a difference between criminal and civil. And from that standpoint, when we're talking about, especially firearms, doing what any reasonable person to do to protect life is what's important. And that's the question that you need to be asking, your insurance company. What does it cover? I know, and I'm comfortable knowing that, because I've seen our insurance work with Brotherhood. I'm comfortable in saying, you know what, I sleep better at night, because I know, as being on that safety team, if I make that decision and it's firearm related, that the insurance is going to cover me.
Right.
I still, for sake of the fact that I'm an NRA instructor and I teach classes, I still carry my own personal insurance on the side. But again, you want to feel comfortable, and I'm surprised that I'm even saying this, and then I'll throw it over to Mike. But the reality is, 10 years ago, if you had asked me, would I even carry my own policy on myself for concealed carry and for something like that, I would have said no. It's, forget it. It's never going to happen.
Right.
But today, again, who would have thought 10 years ago we'd have a safety team for, we were talking about that before too, safety team for churches. So, but that's, I would say, and that's kind of one of the questions that popped up. So I'll just say this and then I'll throw it over to Mike. From a standpoint of dividing ministries, the question to ask is, how does your insurance work with a ministry? Like, is there a separate ministry, or does, like what you said, Dhea, does it cover just volunteers? If you're a volunteer, it covers you. And that's important, because there's no distinction across the board versus distinguishing safety versus ushers versus first impressions. It's, hey, if those people did something and they did it to the best of their ability using common sense logic, and they did it in a children's ministry versus safety versus an usher versus whatever, they're going to be protected because they did what any person would normally do in that circumstance. So Mike, you were going to throw something in there.
Yeah, I think what's great is that overall coverage that's there, that brings those that are enter the facility or act on behalf of, that are kind of covered because they're under that ministry, if you will. So regardless necessary of the hat they're wearing, which ministry they might play, that they're part of that. I think that's important. I know some states have, like if you look at municipal volunteers, people that volunteer for their town or city. Well, the states treat them as quasi-employees, and therefore there's a certain amount of coverage or things that are protected when they're acting in that capacity. So it kind of has a similarity in the sense that when somebody steps forward and is acting in the capacity of serving their church, they're covered. And I think that's great. Now, one of the other pieces I think that maybe we haven't made the distinction is not just ministry, but how many of the churches that we work with have their own little schools next to them? How many are sending out mission trips overseas or things like that? How many are running school camps or summer camps or any vacation Bible school? Those are all different pieces that may or may not be on property, but they're still under that overall operation of the church.
Right. And Mike, and that's when it becomes very important that you sit down and have a conversation with your agent. all of those components should be under that one insurance policy. Most of our churches have a daycare or a preschool, and right now that's the only thing that's bringing them income in. I mean, thank goodness they had those components, right? But again, you need to sit down and have that conversation with your insurance agent. I want to go back to one other part. We were talking about insurance and buildings. We did have 2 church fires this year. An agent can go 50 years with never seeing an insurance fire. And I must have made someone really mad along the way, because I had 2 of them this year and both of them burnt to the ground. The one, I actually was there as it was burning, and that was the hottest fire I have ever been in. No matter how close we got or stayed away, the heat was phenomenal. But while we're talking about your churches, especially your churches, personal property is a big thing. Never have I ever had a church say, oh my gosh, we had so much personal property insured and our church burnt to the ground, we didn't use it all. That's never happened. If you're looking at your insurance policy and you have extra money, I would always suggest putting it on the personal property side. Pews, toilet paper, cleaning products, pencils, pens. We talked about pens earlier. Pens. These are all things that are part of personal property. So if you take a building and you shake it and you turn it upside down, anything that falls out is now personal property. So think about your house. If you close your eyes, James's background, and I don't know if everyone can see that, but he has a plethora of books back there. I'm just in awe. But if he took those and turned it upside down and shook it, each one of those books is probably 20, 30, 40 bucks. And you start adding them up and you go, oh my gosh, I don't have enough in personal property.
Well, and I will definitely second that, because 2 years ago, we were actually on vacation down in Atlanta, and our car was broken into, and we had 5 pieces of luggage stolen out of our car. And of those five pieces of luggage, one of them was my backpack, which is a laptop case. And I can tell you, my kids, up until recently, my kids always put all their electronics in my bag. And so from those 5 cases, when we all finished, and thankfully our insurance company was awesome, they helped us. But I mean, in just my bag, we had, I had a laptop, 2 iPads, a Nintendo game system, a firearm, all of this stuff.
Were you running away from home?
No, we were we were supposed to be on an extended vacation, and we cut it short. But just those 5 bags, when we were all said and done, it was over $6,000. When we went back and we were like, okay, wait a second. Now we bought snacks, we had, clothes, we had all of this stuff. And then when we went back and started pricing it out, and we said, wow, I might have bought this on sale for $10, but the reality is, like you said, with the book, for me to go out now and the market value to replace that is now $30. Right. So how do you do that? So it's interesting to me that, a lot of times we don't think about that. We say, right, well, here's our replacement value. Like you said earlier, here's the $3 million that'll cover anything. Right. And, my home insurance agent goes to our church, and I sat down with him with the policy, and he said, well, we'll cover you, for this amount. And I asked him that. I said, okay, so are you going to cover what my house is worth, or what it would cost if my house burns down 10 years later for me to replace that? And he said, with your policy, we haven't set for inflation. Yes, we'll cover, we will build you a new house. Yeah. And Paul, I was like, yay, we're happy. God forbid anything happens, like that, but it is important. And you're not thinking about that when you're seeing the flames. You're thinking, oh my goodness, we need to do this. But the reality is, when you stop and you actually start doing that assessment, things always come up. I'm still remembering things 2 years after we had that incident where I'm like,
that's what we tell a church.
Yeah.
When you're broken into, we say, don't turn in your claim, give it 2 weeks, because you're going to slowly but surely go
Right.
back to each room and find some. So what we can do, though, to help people with our ministries is we do offer a personal property checklist, and they can go through that checklist and just put stuff in and come up with some kind of total. It's your insurance policy. You can make changes in your insurance policy anytime you want to. But you can go to our website. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah,
Our
absolutely.
website is ThomasK Alexander. So Thomas K Alexander, INS.com. And there are forms and checklists you can just go and print off. You don't have to be a part of our agency. We just want to help the ministries any way we can. That's what we're here for. You call us anytime. We just want to help.
Mike, you wanted to jump in there?
Yeah, James, I think you were starting to allude to some of the things is when you're not all policies are equal. We've laid that out tonight. But I think beyond that is not just what needs to be included.
Right.
There's churches out there that specifically have policies that exclude certain things from
Exactly.
and they don't even realize it. So they're almost like driving without a seatbelt, and they don't realize it. So I think this is a risk that is out there for our churches, and we as security leaders and safety leaders, we're about protecting our churches. We need to make sure that our churches are protected. So there's a conversation that each of you out there listening need to have with your pastor, and it's at least to understand what's in that portfolio. How are you insured? What does that insurance look like? And make sure you're not excluding things.
Not only not excluding, but also keep in mind that your ministry is going to grow. So you need to have that bubble in there that's going to protect you as your ministry grows, and you forget to call your insurance agent. You just started up a daycare. You're worried about that daycare getting up and running. Are you state certified? Do you have a curriculum that needs to be approved? Is everybody background screened? You're not thinking about your insurance company. So yes, when you ask your agent and go over your policy, but also take into consideration your ministry is going to grow, have that bubble in there to protect you as you grow. Your agent should know these things as they sit down and talk to you.
To that point, I think that's a great thing there is that as we're approaching the end of the year, as we do audits, we should be putting check your insurance, call your insurance agent as part of our annual checklist. In other words, guys, this needs to be on our plan, on our church safety ministry plan. Don't say, oh, they got it, or that's not my area of responsibility. Take responsibility, put it on your list, and check that off.
A simple question too, and that's an awesome point, Mike, because a simple question even to one of the pastors, if you're not full-time staff or you're not there, because most of us don't do this full-time, we volunteer, even to bring that up to someone's attention and say, hey, you know what, we just put a bunch of new TVs in, we just put a bunch of new cameras in, it would cost us a significant amount of money to replace those cameras if something happened. So and maybe help in that process, but at least bring it to the attention and say, look, it's the end of the year. Have we done this recently? Have we walked through and made an assessment or a checklist? So definitely, I mean, we've kind of run out of time. I'm really kind of disappointed.
Well, I can put one more thing in. So to make sure you have an insurance company that is a church insurance company, when you finally get a hold of your agent, just simply say, hey, can we start out in prayer? If he fumbles and hangs up on you, then you definitely don't have a Christian agency.
Nice.
That's a touche. That's a good way to definitely figure it out.
You should always start all your meetings with prayer, and if you don't, well, then maybe you need to look at a different agency.
Yeah, that's a great way to close this as well, because we try to open and close in prayer. So that was like a newscaster segue, like back to you. I've enjoyed this. We need to have you back on.
I would be honored.
This will spark more questions probably than it's answered.
I'm here. Give him my number.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that there are people that will leave equipment, vehicles, belongings, whatever, and go on a trip, or I remember, I think it was Up With People. I don't even know if they're still a thing, but they came down to our church years ago, and they brought in this amazing, huge amount of instruments and equipment. It was like they moved in. And those are things that until just this moment, I had not ever thought about, the fact that a trombone is not cheap. And so you've got to be able to, like, and we used to open our church up to the Boy Scouts and several other groups, and they had cabinetry that had all of their a bric-a-brac in it. And I don't know if anybody ever stopped on the board and went, are they insured, or are we covering that?
Now that's a whole different show. Completely whole different show.
Yeah. So this is good stuff. I think we need to have you back on. Unless anybody's got anything else, I'll close this out.
Well,
Thank
all the
you.
hate mail can go to Paul, because he just planted that song in a lot of our heads, and it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Well, if we need to follow it, I could sing "Why Can't We Be Friends?" So
Please don't sing.
all right.
As producer, I still have the ability to mute your mic, and I will take advantage of that if I need to. So go ahead and close us in prayer, and we'll let these folks get on with their night.
Awesome. So, dear Heavenly Father, Lord God, we thank you for moments like these. We get to interview people who are subject matter experts. And Lord God, this is outside of our wheelhouse. And I thank you for the opportunity to answer questions, to raise questions, to spark discussions that can bless churches, Lord God. The right kind of policy protects the church and helps them to do ministry. And that's what this is about. I thank you for everyone involved. I ask that you'd help this episode to reach the right ears. We lift tonight up to you in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Great. So again, if you have any questions or are looking for further information, we have additional contact information on our page, which is churchsafetyguys.com. So you can always visit that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, make sure to join us next week. We're actually going to be talking about church communications and radios and just different tools in the industry that can help with your ministry. So thanks for watching. Have a great and blessed week, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining the Church Safety Guys broadcast. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback. Looking for ways you can help us reach more churches? Share our broadcast with your teams. Consider becoming a monthly ministry partner. Like and share our page and join the discussion in our Facebook groups. Visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com for other great resources. Remember to keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and Semper Disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.